first, we're going to start with our first question. Number one, how much does Jimmy Butler / the Miami Heat have left? So, I mean, we talked about this in the past here, but just to underline this, in the first 3 games of the Eastern Conference Finals, Jimmy Butler, 46% from the floor, looking good, looking spry. Unfortunately, last 4, 39% from the floor. In a lot of those games, it seemed like he was a little punch drunk toward the end. And you could maybe argue for some other people on the team. Bam Adebayo had a pretty rough game 7, as Rob alluded to. You have to wonder how much that was a factor of the long series. But I do wonder, I mean, not only just fatigue-wise, Rob, but maybe just like in terms of this spiritual, exciting, shocking run the Heat are on, like how much more do they have of this in their back pocket? Because Denver's going to be the type of challenge that they probably haven't faced all postseason.
Yeah, things like will have emotional endurance too. You know, it's hard to get up for huge games against really good teams over and over and over. And Miami's had some incredible upsets just to get to this point. But this is going to be their toughest test yet. And a lot of that is going to fall on Jimmy Butler in a way that makes me pretty concerned about Miami's chances. In part, I'm curious if you guys had this experience watching the end of that Eastern Conference final, the last 2 games, but especially game 7. I'm watching the broadcast. Stan Van Gundy is saying over and over, oh, Jimmy is so much more aggressive tonight. He's not even pump faking the way he was pump faking in some of these previous games and clamming up a little bit. I don't know what game that was that Stan was watching where Jimmy Butler was looking hyper aggressive. To me, he was like, get the ball in the post and look for any reason to not shoot it on a lot of these possessions, look for reasons not to attack Rob Williams or even Derek White or Marcus Smart, in part because he was getting blocked and stopped on some of those possessions. He's genuinely trying to problem solve, but he was not being ultra aggressive Jimmy Butler. And if the Heat have a chance to beat a team like the Nuggets, he has to be that. He has to be the version of Jimmy that is death glaring and shouting down Drew Holiday, and not the version that's passing up shots against the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I thought in game 7, he looked better in the sense that he was finding just enough daylight to get a nice, decent shot off in his patented mid-range. I don't think he was that incredible in the paint itself, but in mid-range, he was getting enough space and daylight to get a decent shot off. Game 6, he just had no breathing room. He was just suffocated completely. And we talked about how he just got his shot swatted a bunch of times by guys. And when Derek White is swatting him, a guy who he had no problem creating separation against in the first 2 games, obviously he's just not having the same type of explosion and isn't playing with the same verve. But in game 7, I thought he did just enough to get some clean looks off where Boston had to play him honestly and even sometimes send that help, which I was very drunk off the Caleb Martin juice last night. And I was like, that was the MVP, but we got to be realistic. The guy that's creating offense, the guy that is like who Boston is tailoring their defense to stop is Jimmy Butler. Like Caleb Martin isn't, coming down, bringing the ball up and just straight up attacking the best defender on the team and killing people. He's scoring off of swings and, he's getting his spot ups on and I'm happy for his game. But Jimmy, he's the reason why they're in the finals. But yeah, I think he showed enough in game 7. But the problem is he has to do games 1 and 2 Jimmy, not game 7 Jimmy of last night. Or even the end of game 6 where he gets to the line 3 straight times.
That was huge.
And, he makes 3 incredibly clutch free throws. He needs to be that. Short of that, it's going to be it's going to be a short series, but it's going to be a long series for Jimmy if he's not able to summon that.
And you know where that part gets hard? The free throw drawing part of Jimmy Butler's game gets hard. The guy you don't want to see after playing 3 hard-fought series is Aaron Gordon. And I suspect we're going to see a lot of Aaron Gordon on Jimmy Butler. And if you go back and watch the Nuggets-Suns series, Gordon's game plan, scouting report level discipline against Kevin Durant, I don't think he got caught on one rip through the whole series, right? Aaron Gordon is great at staying down, keeping position, bodying up. For a guy who's a leaper, who's an explosive athlete, a very disciplined defender. And, maybe Jimmy, That doesn't apply in all cases. Sometimes like particular cadences of players will trick even great defenders. Maybe that ends up being the case. But my expectation is that Aaron Gordon is going to play him pretty solidly, pretty competently, is going to stay down on all of Jimmy's attempts to get him off the floor. And that's going to be really tough for him to work around. That's not a guy you can just body up or dip a shoulder into and create space. Jimmy's going to have to really work for everything he gets.
Well, is there anything in addition to Gordon that might trip up the Heat in ways that they haven't already this postseason? Like, I do think the broader question here is, when will the magic kind of run out for Miami? And like, how much was it just this magical run based on will and Heat culture versus them actually maybe outsmarting their opponents, finding little wrinkles in order to exploit? Like, Woz, do you see anything from Denver's side that might slow down a Caleb Martin, a Gabe Vincent, some of these guys that they've been relying on to provide the oomph next to Jimmy?
It sounds like Kenny's music to me, was. I
don't think this is a Kenny series in that way. I think Kenny is he's gonna match up on Caleb Martin. I think this is Aaron Gordon's assignment. And the problem is for Miami is that the Nuggets are gonna dare Jimmy to beat him continuously one-on-one. Things flipped for Caleb Martin and Max Strus and all of those guys after Jimmy embarrassed Grant Williams, and the Celtics were like, yo, we can no longer do the one-on-one. And Jimmy had all of these high assist games after that. He's drawing help one pass away, and he's passing to dudes who literally can't miss. Like, Caleb Martin refused to miss. He shot 50% on threes. He shot 60% overall, right? But I don't think Denver is going to send help. Not in these super obvious ways. They might help every now and again, but they might help off of a guy like Bam or something like that. But they're not going to send a lot of help. And I think if they can stay out of putting themselves in a help scramble, Miami's not going to score, man. They're just not. I think it flipped for them. It turned into something different after game 2 when Jimmy, he's yelling at people and he's like, why did you think this guy was the answer and all of that? And Boston agreed with him, was like, Grant Williams one-on-one is not the answer. But I think Denver's going to be like, you got to show us repeatedly that you're going to just destroy Aaron Gordon in a way that makes it so we feel like it's more economical for our defense to allow, Gabe Vincent to get more shots up.
And that's where it feels like the Heat are about to stumble into a different universe. The Eastern Conference Finals, even when Miami was making a fair number of its shots, still felt like a rock fight, still felt like a struggle for execution on every possession. Flipped to the other side, and the Nuggets just wiped out the best defensive team in the playoffs. I think the Heat are going to have their hands full in lots of different ways, but in part just the sheer firepower of what Denver can put out there. That is hard to keep up with, much less the fact that Denver might actually have some plausible solutions defensively for what Miami is trying to do too.
Yeah, let's flip to the other side of it then, because the next question is Miami better equipped to match up with the Nuggets than any of Denver's previous opponents. And I do think the Lakers were probably the best defense on paper, and they had the size to match up with the Denver team that I think people might forget is actually quite big. Like, Michael Porter Jr. is 6'10".
Oh, yeah.
Aaron Gordon basically is a small ball center on a lot of different teams.
They're going to start like 3 guys who are taller than Bam.
Exactly. And so it's almost the opposite. But the Heat have better guard defenders where they could potentially slow down a Jamal Murray. Also, they probably play bigger than a lot of the other guys that the Lakers maybe even relied on, especially on the perimeter. So it's almost like the opposite proposition. Does Miami's bench of perimeter defense, does that have more success again than a Lakers team that was built more through size? Was with the definitive no right off the bat.
Dude, their big man rotation at the moment is Bam Adebayo, Kevin Love at age 59, Cody Zeller at age 53. It's not going to happen. That the defending of what Denver does is not, the Heat are incapable of it. I'm sure you guys have seen the sort of Bam one-on-one matchups against Jokic through the years.
Yeah.
Jokic uses and abuses him, and that's not a Bam thing. That's an everybody thing. Hell, even AD, who's bigger than Bam, taller, rangier, the Lakers had to get him the hell up off of Jokic. they're not going to be able to guard him with one guy. This Kevin Love thing is just not going to happen. And the thing about the Lakers, why I think they were a better defensive matchup, is that they could do they tried the thing where they could put these sort of thicker, rangier, Braun, Rui, Vando, try to basically put some masking tape on the Jokic problem, right? That's not, the Heat don't have those guys. And so it's going to be their big man. Like, Jimmy's not going to guard Jokic. It's going to be their big men who get this job. And if when they have to inevitably send two, because I know Spo's going to be like, yo, Jokic instinct is not to go out and drop 50. Let's guard him with one. Let's stay home on the rest of the shooters, and let's see what's happening. But the problem is the finals, and Jokic, I think he's smart enough to know that he's probably going to have to get 40 a couple of games, and he's positioned to do so. I think Boston, with their big man depth, it's something different where you could, Grant Williams, a really stout guy, and then you could have Rob or even Horford roaming around and roving. All right, you could put some level of resistance with that big man rotation. The names that I just said to you guys, that's going to be tough. That's going to be so tough.
But that's the question. If that's not the answer, what do you do? And I kind of default to the idea that we're probably going to see at least one opening salvo of, let's see if Jokic wants to drop 45 to 55 points to win this game, just to kind of test where his stomach is to start this series. Because if you're in Miami, maybe you can steal a game that way. I kind of don't think that's going to happen, but look at the alternatives. If you're not doing the one-on-one game with Jokic and hugging the shooters, you're going to trap one of the best passers in NBA history. Is that what we're going to do? We're going to send doubles his way? That's going to fail.
And your guys are short. You're not trapping with size and length. You're trapping with shorties.
Trapping with shorties. Or are we going to run our patented Miami Heat zone defense against the guy who is like tailor-made to bust zones? That's not going to happen.
And it's a difference when Al Horford catches the ball in the middle of the zone at the foul line and
doesn't even look at the rim.
Yes, he takes a floater from 14 feet away. Jokic is not doing it. And then even if he does, that's a shot he's extremely good at making, right? It's just, I just think defensively, the Heat are not going to win this series on defense. If they find a way to get buckets and they able to match these guys baskets for basket, then they'll do it. If their hot shooting continues, then they'll do it. But they are not, I repeat, not going to slow these guys down.